Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Reviews by Hunter. That's me, I'm Hunter, and today I have a review for you for the new movie, Superman. I got to see this one last night, and this movie has probably been one of the most hyped up movies of the year, particularly for the summer. It's supposed to be like one of the biggest of the summer. A lot of talk about, will it make $1 billion? Is this gonna, be the new start that the DCU needs? And I will say that I very much enjoyed this movie for the most part. I think that for how hyped it was, I definitely had some high expectations. And this movie is enjoyable. Like, I liked it. I think it's a good movie. I just don't think it is necessarily the hype beast that everyone might have been hoping it was going to be. It's not perfect and it does have some issues, but let's get into it. Okay. So, Superman. I'm forgetting who this was. Oh, how could I forget? This is directed by James Gunn, by the way, which I like James Gunn, so I was excited to see this. So let's just get into like what I didn't like about the movie first, and then we'll get into some of the stuff that I thought was actually pretty good. So first of all, Lex Luthor in this movie, played by Nicholas Hoult. I wasn't sure about him as Lex Luthor when the trailer dropped, but he gives like an A-plus performance. He is very unlikable as a villain, and he feels almost jealous, almost like a child is, of Superman. And it's almost funny unintentionally how much he just despises Superman. But I didn't understand 100% why Lex Luthor hated him so much. There's no real flashback as to showing was there an event as to that happened between Superman and Lex Luthor that makes him think that Superman is this giant threat to the Earth, even though Superman has proven himself to be a hero and a savior to the people of Earth multiple times. So for how much hate that was portrayed from Lex Luthor to Superman, I wanted a little bit more as to like, okay, but why? Like, what happened to make you be this bitter towards this guy? So that's one thing. Another thing that was not super likable at some parts of the movie was CGI issues. There's not as much that I noticed. There was a particular scene where Superman is pulled into like this. He's in a pocket dimension, and he's pulled into a light, like a photon light stream, and he's trying to get out of there because he's going to be sucked into a black hole. And just that whole sequence didn't look super great in my opinion. It looked a little bit clunky, but that's like one of the only things I noticed visually where I wasn't a huge fan. There's also like one or two characters in this film. You've probably heard there is a lot of characters in the movie, and that is true. There's one or two characters in the movie that I just didn't buy into. One of them is Hawk Girl, who is a part of this group in the movie called the Justice Gang, not the Justice League yet, which is Hawk Girl, the Green Lantern, and Mr. Terrific, and I'll talk more about them later. But I felt like Hawk Girl's presence in this movie just was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like it was like, why are you even here? Like, I felt like she was very insignificant. There is one scene that she has where she basically murders somebody, but we'll talk about that later. There's also this girl called the Engineer, which is he's kind of like one of the right-hand man of Lex Luthor. I don't know if it was the actress herself. Her powers are cool. She uses like these nano robots that allow her to transform her body into anything she can imagine. So she changes her hands into like razor blades. She changes it, I think, into a rocket at some point, or some kind of weapon of that sort. She seems to really like changing it into sharp objects though. But I don't know, I didn't even know why the Engineer was like on Lex Luthor's side. That's another thing. A lot of characters aren't fleshed out in the film for how many characters there are, which is sometimes an issue because they get a lot of screen time, but it's like, I don't know anything about this character, their motivations, their backstory. Why are they here? Why are they helping Lex Luthor? Why are they helping this person? Like, it didn't make sense. I don't know. The Engineer, very cool concept. She does have some cool fight scenes, but not one of my most favorite characters. Some other things that one of my biggest issues of this movie is that Superman gets beat up like throughout the whole movie. He gets his butt whooped. That's why I chose that little background picture for you guys, because that's literally pretty much Superman throughout the film. And that was an issue for me because I'm like, Superman, they say in the beginning of the film, he is the strongest metahuman and he's been protecting Earth. But he just cannot catch a break throughout the whole film. Every villain, every antagonist gets the upper hand on him, and he never feels like he is this mythical next level beast of a hero. You know what I mean? And that was an issue for me. Like, I wanted to see Superman come out on top a little bit more throughout this movie than he gets to. And so, I don't know, man. It's almost like they kind of nerfed him in this movie. And a lot of times he gets out of situations because he gets help from other heroes like the Justice Gang. So that is one thing that I didn't like to see. Superman consistently on the defensive. Another, probably my biggest critique of the movie, and that is James Gunn tries to bring a very Guardians of the Galaxy vibe to this movie. And what I mean by that is there is a lot of comedy in places that there doesn't need to be. And it's almost like he was like, oh, this worked in Guardians of the Galaxy, like this vibe, this lighthearted, everybody's always kind of half serious, half not. I didn't love it all the time in this movie because there was a couple moments where I was really invested in a scene playing out, particularly near the end. We had Superman and Lex Luthor kind of having this back and forth about... It was actually a good scene at first because Superman is saying, like... Well, okay, first of all, Lex Luthor is like, well, Superman, you piece of garbage, because he lost. Superman wins, Lex Luthor loses. And Superman's like, you're wrong about me. Like, I'm as human as you are. I wake up every day and I experience different emotions like fear, and I screw up. Screwing up is the biggest, that's what makes you human, right? And Lex Luthor begins to retort and kind of give his side of things of why Superman, I guess, is such a abomination in his eyes. And it's immediately undercut by a comedic moment involving Crypto, the superdog. And I just felt like, man, there was at least 2 or 3 moments in this film where a moment that I thought would have strengthened your characters, you took it away with comedy. And the more you do that, the more comedic scenes you add in moments that are supposed to be a little bit more dramatic and heartfelt. If the characters on screen aren't taking it seriously, why do I take it seriously? So certain moments that should mean a lot more don't mean as much because of that. And I think that was a big problem. I genuinely think that, and when I tell you my rating at the end of this movie, at the end of this movie review, this movie could have been a 9, maybe even 10 out of 10. It just got a couple of things wrong, man, and that was one of them, was too much comedy. So yeah, let's get into like what I did enjoy about the film, okay? Well, first of all, great casting. Absolutely amazing casting. Like, that was a big topic of discussion when we first saw the trailer, but guess what? Everyone knocks it out of the park. You have David Corn Sweat as the new Superman, okay? And I gotta say, he fits the bill. I think he's great. He looks the part. He acts the part. I buy into him being Superman. I wish we saw more of Clark Kent. We really don't see a lot of Clark Kent. He gets maybe 2 scenes in the film. One of them is one of the clips that they released early, and I don't think that they should have done that. It's the clip where he's being interviewed by Lois, right? Lois knows that he's Clark Kent Superman. They are dating in the film, and they have a great interview about how Superman, has interfered in foreign affairs and whether that's okay or not, And Superman is just a guy that loves life. He cares about life, which is another thing. He cares about human life, artificial life. He saves a squirrel at one point in this movie in slow motion, which was awesome. But throughout the interview, Superman is just like, people were gonna die. What did you want me to do? I was saving lives. And Lois is like really pushing on him about like, yeah, but who were you representing? Were you representing the U.S. government? Blah, 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 blah. What about the repercussions of your actions? And Superman's just like, I just represent myself and doing good things. Anyways, I was talking about the casting and then I went off on a tangent, but Rachel Brosnahan, I'm so bad at saying actors' names, plays Lois Lane. She's great. She has such a great screen presence and good chemistry with Clark Kent / Superman when they are on screen together. It feels like they're not really on screen together very often. Well, there goes my background. I gotta get a new background thing going on here. But honestly, like, I don't know. He's because we don't see him as Clark Kent as much. We don't get to see the relationship between him and Lois as much as you would maybe like to. But they're both great in their roles. Nicholas Hoult. People weren't sure about Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I think I already said he gives an A+ performance. I thought he was unlikable. Wanted him to get punched in the face multiple times. Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern. Honestly, people again were criticizing like his haircut and blah 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 blah. For the screen time he gets, I liked him. I thought he was good. He brings the character to life. I think he does a good job. He definitely is another one of those characters that mostly has comedic relief moments, but he does have a couple really cool action scenes where he's using the lantern to just like destroy large groups of people all at once. He's a fun character on screen. Okay, here Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl, just not wasn't for me. Maybe, and again, maybe that's not her fault. Another one of those things where it's like she didn't really have a time to shine ever in the film, and I didn't know anything about her. Like I don't know, I just didn't know anything about her, and she doesn't do anything to get your attention. So I think those are kind of the main ones that I really liked in this movie. So yeah, really good casting is what I was talking about originally. The other thing I liked is there is awesome visuals. I know that that's kind of, it's both a critique and a positive. For the most part, I think the movie looks good. I think there are some really good shots of Superman looking heroic, although honestly I wish there was a few more. Like the main one that's really cool is Superman, the city is falling apart because Lex Luthor has messed around too much with this invention he made that creates pocket dimensions. But the problem is the longer it stays open, the more unstable it gets, and it can cause a black hole, and it causes a rift to tear through the city. So at this point, buildings are falling over and toppling over as this rift devastates the city. And Superman, there's this woman driving, and there's a giant building about to fall on her. Superman flies in, saves her. The girl's looking in her rear view mirror, and she sees Superman just emerge from all of the smoke, and he's flying and posing. He was aura farming. That's what he was doing. He was aura farming, and I loved that part. I wish we saw more of that. Like we only get maybe one or two scenes where Superman is looking heroic, but I think like when he fights the giant kaiju monster, I thought the visuals there looked pretty good. The visuals and CGI for like the Green Lantern's abilities were pretty fun. Like there's a lot that keeps you engaged throughout the movie, and it is fun. It's fun to watch. I'm glad I saw this in theaters for sure. And another thing was that this Superman character, played by David Cornsweet, I think is better than the Man of Steel one, because this Superman is so optimistic. He's so hopeful about doing good with the powers that he's been given. And I love how optimistic he is and how much he cares about just everybody. And the actor not only, like, we see that. I'm kind of jumping all over the place as far as the plot of the movie, but there is a scene where Lex Luthor captures this random guy that Superman interacted with one time, plays Russian roulette with him. This is one of the darker parts of the film, and shoots this guy in the head in front of Superman. And you can see Superman, just the strain on his face, and you see a tear roll down his face because it hurts him deeply to see that. Even though he didn't know this man on a personal level, but Superman is just he's the ultimate optimist, and I did appreciate that in the performance by David Cornsweet. Very fun to watch. There is a good score in this film, particularly for some of the scenes when Superman is on screen. That makes it feel more epic, makes it feel like more of a spectacle, you know what I mean? I do think near the end, again, James Gunn tries to get to Guardians of the Galaxy-ish, trying very, very hard to elevate a scene through the use of music, like soundtracks that he picks. It's okay, but it's like, dude, you did this way better in Guardians of the Galaxy. And yeah, there is a lot of fun action scenes. There's enough that I never felt that I was bored. You know, Mr. Terrific. I haven't got to talk a lot about Mr. Terrific, okay? So Mr. Terrific is someone I've never even heard of. And he, oh my gosh, let's real quick look up who he's played by because he did such a great job. He deserves mentioning. Eddie Gathegi. Eddie Gathegi plays Mr. Terrific. So he's like a genius level hero, part of the Justice Gang. He's very like he's very straightforward, very blunt. He doesn't like he's not very emotional at all. He's very straight laced, but he has this ability to control these little robots, and he has one of the best action scenes maybe in the whole film where he takes out like this whole little camp of people that are helping out Lex Luthor with his pocket dimension, kind of like keeping that area up and running and secure. He just dismantles them. And as much as I loved that scene and how cool it was to see the use of his powers, probably one of the better action scenes I've seen this year. The movie is called Superman. Why does Superman not have really a memorable part in the film as regarding his feats of strength, right? He punches a lot. We do get to see him use his like frost breath or ice breath a couple of times. And I think we only see him use his laser eyes maybe once. And you saw that in the trailer, right? There is another antagonist in the film, Ultraman. Again, I don't read the comics, so I didn't know much about Ultraman. Another one of the right-hand men of Superman. He is the reason Superman loses his first battle at the beginning of the movie. He's in this suit, or I think it was him. It's called like the Hammer of Bavaria, which is this thing designed by Lex Luthor. And this guy is like as strong as Superman. He can fly. He can outpower him. And we find out later in the film, which again, if you read the comics, you probably already knew. Ultraman, at least in this movie, ends up being a clone of Superman. Lex Luthor got a strand of hair from one of Superman's previous battle sites and used it to clone Superman. The only drawback is Ultraman is basically unintelligent, as Lex Luthor puts it. He has to tell Ultraman what to do, and that's another thing that Lex Luthor does that I thought was D1 hating levels. He has this system set up where he gives commands to Ultraman as far as how to like almost like a video game input. He'll be like A1 and Ultraman will punch. He'll say like B3 and Ultraman will do like one of these. It's like he's commanding him through these different short little codes. It was interesting to see, but the reason Lex Luthor can do that is because he's just studied hours and hours of Superman fighting and knows what Superman's going to do before he even does it, which is really cool. So I've kind of talked about what I liked, what I didn't like. So what was the movie about? Like, what was the plot, right? Well, essentially, Superman interfered in a war between two different countries, I think. One of them was called Baravia, and I don't even remember what the other one was called. But the world is kind of like, should Superman have should he have interfered? You know, where's the red tape for Superman? Lex Luthor makes it his mission to turn the world against Superman by infiltrating his home base in Antarctica. There's this message left behind for Superman by his parents. The first part of the message is the only one that Superman has ever heard, which is them telling him that they are sending him to Earth to be a protector and to have a good life and to survive and be that planet's strongest hero. Well, Lex Luthor uncovers the second part of the message, which is them actually saying they sent Superman there to rule over it. They say that the people of Earth are simple-minded and easy to take over. Basically telling him to rule with an iron fist. And this message gets broadcasted to everybody, right? So almost instantaneously, the public turns on Superman. So that scene in the trailer where someone throws an empty can at the back of Superman's head, that's why. It felt kind of forced when I watched the movie because I'm like, these people all loved him. And then all of a sudden, one message that nobody even took the time to figure out if it was real or not, the whole nation hates him. And so it's I don't know. So Superman is trying to figure out who he is why he was sent to Earth. Is he a hero or is he just another, threat? And we get to explore that a little bit, not as much as I would have liked to. There is a nice moment between him and his dad out on the porch. The dad telling him, your choices, your actions, that's what makes you who you are. And I did like that. But again, one of the criticisms is there is a lot going on in the film, and I agree. A lot of these emotional moments either are not long enough or are undercut by comedy, and that's a big problem in the film, man. I think it takes away from there really being an iconic moment in the film, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about is, so I believe it was Boravia that is going to attack this other country, and so you have this scene where you have this little boy, and he's gets the help of these other kids, and he's lifting up this giant flag. And you have the Superman score playing in the background, very epic. And on the flag is the Superman symbol, right? And he starts chanting, Superman, Superman. And I'm not going to lie, then everyone starts joining in and chanting Superman because he saved them before. Superman's the ultimate symbol of hope in this film, and I did like that. However, they built up to this moment with the dramatic music in the background, them chanting Superman. They're on the brink of annihilation by this other military that Lex Luthor has poured I think it was close to $80 billion worth of arms and stuff into this military. And so I was waiting for Superman to finally come and descend down and save them, but that doesn't ever happen because too much is happening in the movie. What could have been an iconic scene in this movie of them chanting for Superman and he's their last hope and he finally flies down, that doesn't happen because he's too busy fighting Ultraman and trying to save the city from this black hole rift created by Lex Luthor. Instead, Superman tells Lex Luthor, your plan's not going to work, sorry, I called in some friends. And those friends, of course, are the Justice Gang. We do get a cool sequence there, but I was like, man, how do you build up to that moment and then not have actual Superman appear to save the day? Kind of let me down. Another thing that happens in this movie, I've kind of mentioned the pocket dimensions. I forgot to mention, there's another guy, I forget the name of his character, but basically his ability is he can metamorphize into any material. I don't know if he's had to touch the material before or if it's just any material. He's kind of like the Engineer, but different. So, for example, he can transform his hands into kryptonite. So at one point, Lex Luthor's holding Superman prisoner in one of these pocket dimensions in this kind of glass prison. And he's forcing this guy, I think his name might be Rex, to transform into kryptonite to keep Superman sedated. Eventually, Superman convinces him, he says, listen, I see him holding your son hostage. I will go save your son if you just let me go. Eventually the guy gives in and he does, and he transforms into the closest thing he can think of that would resemble a yellow sun to help Superman get his powers back. And then, but here's my thing with the pocket dimension. At the end of the movie when Lex Luthor loses, I felt like, what happened to all those people in the pocket dimension? There had to have been hundreds of people in there. And I'm like, do they just have to stay there? Like, is Superman going to go back for them? What happened to them? Are they just trapped in an alternate dimension forever? I don't know. Crypto the Superdog. Haven't talked a lot about him in this review. You know, he had some good moments. We do find out that he's a bad dog. He never listens to Superman. He's always biting at him. He's always doing things he's not supposed to. It takes him like 5 or 7 times of Superman like finally being like, Crypto, come on, for him to do what he's supposed to. He's fine. He didn't take away my enjoyment of the movie. We find out the reason that he's a bad dog is Superman's cousin, I think Kara, Supergirl, comes in at the very end of the movie and is like, hey, where's my dog? And the dog freaking tackles her and is smashing her against the concrete, but she's loving it. Turns out she doesn't train the dog, even though it has superpowers, so the dog thinks everybody likes to play rough, but they don't. She seemed in her tiny little stretch there on screen like she had some charisma to her, so hopefully we get to see more of her. Played by Millie Alcock. I think she did good in the little scene she had there. But I know I jumped around a lot on this movie, but listen, is it the hype beast that maybe some of us were hoping it was going to be? Probably not. I don't think it was. I don't think this movie was even a 9 or 10 out of 10, which brings me to my official rating. For Superman, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. It is one of the better movies I've seen this year. I think it does suffer from having a lot of high expectations put on it. However, just a couple of issues that could have been tweaked and they could have fixed that would have brought it from maybe a 7.5 for me to maybe even a 9 or a 10. Like I've kind of said already, take out some of this comedy stuff, man. We don't need this in every superhero movie where it's too much and you're taking away from big emotional moments that I'm invested in, and then I get pulled right out of it. Also, yes, there is a bit too much going on at times, and there's very cool... I feel like I say this so many times in my reviews. In this film, there are things that I liked and I wanted more of, but I couldn't get more of it because the movie stretches itself too thin to the point where you can only enjoy a little bit of the dynamic between Lois and Clark Kent. You can only enjoy a little bit of Superman trying to figure out who he is when the people turn on him. I can only enjoy a little bit the characters in general in the film because we don't get a lot of time to have them fleshed out. And if you're not familiar with comic books like myself, you don't know anything about Mr. Terrific. You don't know anything about... is that a thing in the comics where they were called the Justice Gang before the Justice League? I don't know. I don't know what the heck Hawkgirl even does other than fly around and scream. There are things here and there where I'm like, ugh. Good movie. Worth seeing. A lot of rewatchability. A couple of issues, a couple of critiques. However, I'll say this. I'm seeing a lot of different opinions on this film. I'm seeing people post YouTube videos with the headline saying that this was awful. I'm not in that camp that thinks that this movie is awful. It does a lot of good, but the things that it does bad really do detract from the film. And I think that's kind of all I have to say before I just start repeating myself. Superman, I think, was a lot of fun. Real quick, I want to look up the budget for this movie, right? Because this is the movie that people are like, oh, this is going to be the $1 billion... the movie to make $1 billion. So, let's see here. I'm looking up really quickly. Okay, the budget was $55 million. I thought it was higher. It was only $55 million for this? Really? Okay, let's see how much money it's made so far. By the way, it has a 7.4 on IMDb. That's right in line with where I thought it was. 82% on Metacritic, 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's where it stands so far. Really quickly, I should have looked this up beforehand. That's okay. Superman box office. All right, if I see, okay. The Hollywood Reporter says Superman flying to 55 million Friday for between 115 million to 120 million opener. Okay, and then CNBC also says that it was on its way to 140 million? Really? Okay, $140 million opening. Okay. So, okay, man, I'm gonna say this, guys. I don't think this movie will make $1 billion. It's a strong opening. I think as more and more reviews and things like that come out, I see this movie maybe not petering out, but I think the cap for this movie, box office-wise, maybe it'll be around like 600 million. I just don't see it making $1 billion. My theater wasn't very packed, which was very surprising. Fantastic Four might outdo it at this point, to be honest. But yeah, that's about all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you I hope you subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the movie if you saw it. If you did see it, leave a comment telling me what you thought about it, and leave a comment telling me, is this movie the movie of the summer, or is it just a enjoyable film that got overhyped? So that's all I got for you. Take care.